evening. I'm going to be reading from my notes because I'm prone to increasing moments of senior forgetfulness these days. I have 2 minutes to introduce the next honorary, but would need at least an hour to regale you with the extraordinarily broad scope of this woman's accomplishments in the fields of academics, political activism, as a counselor, teacher, wife, mother, and driving force in her community. She is a champion of many causes in support of women, Latino youth, and health services for all, offering her scholarly focus on Spanish literature and language in numerous high schools and universities, succeeding in all her endeavors, often against all too familiar odds. Gabriella's poetry was what first brought my attention and my admiration. Like her, it is passionate, searingly honest, and validates the voices of a people too often marginalized. Yet she manages to speak for all people with insight and compassion. In her poetry, words and images are often presented in a humorous vein. Yet even as we laugh, there is a subtle ache, an ache of recognition of the painful truths of the human condition. This poet truly honors and celebrates life in all its multi-level complexity and diversity. How very honored I am to introduce this woman who, through her artistry, reaches and teaches us all. It is my great joy to welcome Gabriella Gutierrez y Muhs.
Well, those are hard acts to follow, and we're having a wonderful party tonight. I'm so happy to be here. Buenas noches. Hello to all of you, and especially to my son, Tellito, sitting in the audience. Thank you to my gorgeous husband of 12 years, Eric Muhs, my mother and inspiration, Socorro Favela, my sister, and all my comadre groupies. Lupe, Grace, Peggy, I saw a couple of them out there. I would like to thank the Cultural Council and ESNOFET for establishing this necessary precedent in our multicultural community. Several people asked me to read my narrative poem, The Plastic Book, which is also the title of my CD-ROM. So I will read that first, then one excerpt from my autobiographic Chicana novela entitled Malgré Tout, translations, notes, love letters, stories, birth certificates, lists, and poems. Coming out in the the winter of 2001. Malgré tout is an expression that means in spite of it all in French. And I chose to title it in French because of all the stereotypes about where Mexicans are and that we're always usually in the fields, but we're not, we're everywhere. I will finish, the third piece I will read is The Accordion, a poem dedicated to Michael E. Sullivan, whom I hope is here. The Plastic Book. My aunt thinks that plastic is the solution of this century. The more plastic, the better. As far as she's concerned, she likes polyester clothing too because it's practically like plastic. It even smells like plastic when she does her wash. The fashion wave that crested in the 70s with double knit polyester pantsuits submerged her, and she hasn't come to take a breath since. Polyester is the key to women's freedom. It's the end to ironing, says my Aunt Leonora as she hangs up her patterned pastel pants and matching vests. She thinks of food and she thinks plastic. She loves chicken. So when she returns from her travels in Mexico, she eats at Kentucky Fried Chicken. They put it plastic, not like the restaurant chicken from Canatlan that gives everybody diarrhea, she insisted. Gringos are so very clean that if something doesn't have a plastic scent, it's dirty. After an earthquake in 1989, my aunt was beside herself with pride because everyone's dishes and glasses had broken, falling from kitchen shelves. But hers were plastic. And that's why she told me, you see, dear, that's why if I were you and were setting up my kitchen after getting married to the man of my dreams, I'd buy plastic glasses so I wouldn't have to be afraid of dropping them. She started selling Tupperware shortly before the big earthquake in '89 and was ready to evangelize her many friends and acquaintances who had their memories tumble and shatter on the floor. For my last Saint's Day, my aunt gave me a big plastic doll. He's good at holding me when I cry because he doesn't worry about getting his shirt stained. And he doesn't get upset at seeing a woman cry. He listens with clean ears to my new poems. When I want a son, I call him any boy's name. When I want to make love, he listens. When I want a friend, he caresses me with his eyes and with his sleepy plastic hands. When I'm ready to sleep, he's sleepy too. He's flexible with the patience of his kind. All her shoes are plastic too. She doesn't like leather. How can you put an animal's skin right on top of your own skin? In Mexico, she likes to wear plastic sandals like a rancho woman so her feet stay dry even when she steps in a puddle. She suggested that books ought to be made of plastic so that they wouldn't get wet when we cried over them. This would also solve the problem of the ashes from burned paper. She says the paper ashes are the wishes that the dead put in dreams and that we breathe from them when we fall asleep in love. If I write a book one day, I'd like it printed on plastic so that lovers can cry on it. Kids can play with it, grandmothers can slip through the clutches of thieves, and so that women can leave it open on the table as a splash guard for when they serve dinner or slam the coffee down or wash dishes while reading it. Most of all, I'd like to give my aunt a book in the most beautiful and sacred plastic in which I tell her about the best man I know, the doll she gave me for my Saint's Day. This is called A Real Mexican Man, and it's an excerpt from my novel, Malgré Tout. And I wrote it in fun because I wanted to bring out some of our own personal stereotypes that we have about our own ethnic group. We always joked about this when we were on our honeymoon. Eric had taken me to some hot springs without telling me that they were nude hot springs. So there I was. I either wore my black one-piece suit that looked enormous in front of all that nudity, or I went nude. There I was, ridiculous once again in my life, not wearing what I was supposed to wear, like a snake that all of a sudden changed skin at the wrong season. I was startled and I was upset because he had not told me what to expect. I had seen him as my translator, my interpreter, the way I had been his faithful interpreter in France, in Mexico, in Watsonville. And he did not produce. But the difference that was most obvious to me at the moment was that a real Mexican man would have never taken his Mexican newlywed to some nudist hot tubs for everybody to stare at. And for her to stare at all those other male bodies. So I yelled at him the most hurtful thing that I could say at the time. You are not a real Mexican man. He just stared at me. What defense could he have against that? How could he answer? Hadn't I noticed before that he was not Mexican? In my mind, he was Mexican, though, because everything I loved was Mexican. He had to be Mexican, and so I had made him Mexican without his permission. I did other things without his permission. I also donated his sperm without asking him. My friend Sarah, a lesbian in a relationship trying hard to have a baby, was telling me that they were charging her $600 every month for inseminations, and I just blurted out, "Why are you doing that? We have so much sperm at home." How can you be paying for that? I'll give it to you for free. Well-mannered that she is, she just looked at me and said, "Maybe you'd like to ask Eric about that." Oh, no. I'm sure he wouldn't mind. I got home and told Eric that this poor woman was paying so much money, and how were we to allow that? And couldn't we just give her a little bit of sperm every once in a while? It wouldn't hurt us, really. But the storm arrived without notice. "What? You gave away my sperm without telling me? How would you like it if I donated your eggs to a woman friend who doesn't have any?" "Well, I would actually love that if she was wonderful like Sarah. It would be great for me to be able to help her and save her some money that she'll need for the baby. You can donate my eggs anytime you like. I'm not an individualist, selfish, ego-centered male." What? You think you're the only one in this world that has sperm? Why, it flows through laundry water every day. I know any real Mexican man would love to give his sperm away. And know that it is being useful, and not just for dirtying sheets or underwear. I really thought you were beyond petty thinking about a few ounces of sperm. You are thinking with your sperm. Stealing is also taking something away from someone that you could give them. Thank you. When I was 15, I met Michael Sullivan, the first non-Latino man in my life who was interested in my future as a professional, as a human being, as an entity, my high school counselor. My sister Yolanda was a junior and his student assistant. He asked if she was interested in attending college, and she said, "No, I have to work because I have a very bright young sister who needs to go to the university." He sent us both to first-rate universities. Michael never in 28 years received acknowledgement or recognition for his brilliant hard work and dedication to inclusion and justice at Watsonville High, to including minorities and working-class kids in major universities, to the American dream. In accepting this award, I want to emphasize that one human being can positively change and improve the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, when intervening to help people help themselves. Because my creative work is about creating understanding and cross-cultural bridges, I would like to dedicate my award to Michael E. Sullivan, my high school counselor. The Accordion is a short poem I wrote for him, and it's my last piece. The Accordion. The U.S. opened and closed for me like an accordion. I had not known how to open it or play it until I met Michael. Michael stretched the notes that had been sitting in the corner dormant. He knew of education and country-like schools far away. He knew of white men sitting in admissions office waiting to give us scholarships through a very small door. Mike knew how to read us and shape us in writing in the image of scholars by calling us so while eating enchiladas and mole at our homes, while typing our recommendations and letters with one finger at a time. Michael, the first white man I got to know, the Thomas Jefferson Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Pedro Infante. The gentleman, the honest, the selfless, best of the 20th polyester man. The bookstore man, paying with his own money for our applications, sweatshirts, t-shirts, gas, and food, our telephone calls, physically carrying us to college through his knowledge, to and through an academic door. Michael, accompanied by translators, filling out financial aid forms with my mother in the rented shack in the evening after cannery working. I eating brioche for breakfast in France. Michael Sullivan 24/7 in today's lingo, armed with all of us, translators for others who look for the small door in us, because we now are his shield, his door, his honoris causa diploma, a PhD in humanity, justice. Like him, cultural translators, accordions. Thank you.
Gabriella, didn't I tell you? On behalf of Ethnofaith, I wish to present you with this Calabash Award.
This is the miracle man.
Gabriella, thank you so much. This is something I will never forget. And I want you all to know that it's people like Gabriella here who's made all the work and effort really worth it. This is the real reward of being a high school counselor.